the American military turned the gun on German military, killed over 500,000 people in one day at the end of the war. The Soviet military killed millions of people through the side. So it's hard to really justify stopping one genocide for endorsing the okay, no one even thinks about it, no one remembers it or even talks about the genocide of the soldiers. Right, and I can't remember what the name for that genocide is, but there's some term for it. At the end of World War II.
There's also something that said that we didn't go into Germany to stop the Holocaust. We didn't even know the Holocaust bring that on until we got there. Soldiers, when they were marching into Germany, discovered ashes falling from the sky. I think that was the first news that the Holocaust was taking place. But I think you're absolutely right. As far as that goes, we should switch one genocide for another. Even if the other is are people who are wearing the military uniform. I don't think that's necessarily okay. Anybody else have any other comments or anything?
I think it's interesting drawing the distinction and correlation between NGOs versus quite the IR lingo that you were able to present. I think it's a little bit more about that we can do nothing until type of organization that it's going to be that resonate better with people right now is that anything.
Right. Well, an NGO is an estate, and what is an NGO basically? Whether or not it's a multinational corporation or if it's a group like the Red Cross or Amnesty International, what is it basically? It's just a collection of individuals who voluntarily agree to participate. They give funds, they give their time, they give their resources in order to participate in this association of individuals. It's voluntary in nature, and I think that's the real big difference between an NGO going abroad and promoting human rights and a state. Because a state may say, I can't remember how many people I argued with when we were talking about participating in NATO's mission in Libya to topple Gaddafi. Got lots of arguments about this because people on the left and the right were both for this, and they were saying, well, it's a human rights issue. And I said, no, there's nothing human rights about this at all. Is it bad? Yes. Some innocent people in Libya may die as a result of the revolution there. Of course it's bad. I hate when any innocent people die. But Libya was a special case. The people who were revolting, and it was a revolution, were actually storming military bases, military compounds, stealing guns, and in some cases stealing heavy artillery to use to wage their revolution, to fight back against the government. That's not a human rights issue. That's a civil war. That's a revolution. If this were a case where the Gaddafi government had decided, this small ethnic group, which are unarmed and have no rights, I've decided they're unwanted here and I'm going to go purge them. That would be a human rights case. And I think that's out of the realm of an NGO to be able to do anything effective to stop. And that's a case where an IGO like UN or NATO would have a moral justification to go in and intervene in those cases.
So there is no accepted or generalized legal status for an NGO, like there is, corporation, a corporation that files legal tax tax. It's just nomenclature for these types of organizations.
I think so, and it depends on in what way they what sort of practices that they go about. I think it also depends on what country that they're based out of. Young Americans for Liberty is an NGO, or a 501 free nonprofit. If we wanted to promote human rights abroad, if we decided that we wanted to broaden out our mission statement to do that, there would be nothing to stop that. But Google is also a non-government organization. It's a corporation, but it's an organization that's not government. It's private. They have private business interests. And they definitely promote human rights by trying to pressure China to have greater Apple has done the same thing recently in China. some groups have come down on Apple because they've been running quote-unquote sweatshops or whatever kind of pejorative term that you want to use to describe their operation here, that they produce our iPads and iPhones, and they were paying the people, probably a wage that here in America we would consider less than desirable, and the conditions, are not something that we're used to. Some people came down on Apple and said, well, you're exploiting the people of China. But those people weren't slaves. The employees at the factory were slaves. They were voluntarily working at these wages and these conditions because it was probably better than any other opportunity.
Better than standing in a rock having spent over like this 12 hours.
Yeah, better than any other opportunity that they had. And so who are we to project our system of values and beliefs on them and say, that's not good enough. You shouldn't settle for that. So in a way, I look at a company like Apple who goes and employs people like that, even if they don't abide by our notion of what's best and what's good enough. They're providing jobs, they're providing income, they're increasing the standard of living for these people. In a way, I consider that promoting human rights. Plus, they're exposing them to our staff, our institutions. The way we do business and whatnot, and something small like that can really change a person's mind. It really takes a small end with a person to try to change their heart and mind. That's much better than giving a person a job at for pennies a day is much better than pointing a gun at them and saying from now on you're not going to do this. Any other comments?
And on that note, just a little fact. Newsweek or Time or whichever magazine does their front page story with the number of suicides that have happened at this Apple plant, and the percentage of people who committed suicide over the period of time at the Apple plant was lower than the national average suicide rate for China. So it seems horrible. Man, 90 suicides is kind of bad, but how many people are working there? And
right.
Maybe was it something else? Not fewer people, the percentage of themselves.
The story that they should be reporting is probably that there are lots of other reasons to commit suicide in China other than you're not making enough money and your job. There's probably lots of other reasons that go into that, but they didn't report on that part.
Like the congressionally approved one-child policy, we gave them awards for.
Exactly. Very small and very controlled free market zone. The only way that these people can make money is to make a dime a day is to come out of the rural areas, come into these special government, identified free market zones and work for a wage, and then try to take it back home.
There's a city in China. I can never remember the name of it, but it was like a test they ran in the late 70s and 80s where they had this, I guess it's one of the zones you're referring to, and they had basically complete capitalism, no regulation, and that, of course the city ridiculously thrived and exploded, and you had a mass migration from the rural to, but like that city, that model, it's really impressive. I know a lot of people who do economics around the globe that refer to it.
What is the charter city? Is that idea of a charter city?
Hong Kong is the biggest charter city they have, and it's rated like 90 some odd on the free market scale, and like America is like 50.
Right.
So, and I think Norway might be in the 70s or something like that. The point being, when they open up these charters, I mean, the United States would consider to do something. To do something. Open up New York as a harbor city with pure free market capitalism. Those are ideas that are even considered. But you see how it thrives in somewhere like China, where all the jobs go. And the people are just piling into all the rural areas and getting jobs there, getting paid well, because that's what the government does.
And this is a double-edged sword for China, too, and it's really interesting to look at it from that perspective. Because during the global financial crisis, it was these free market zones that were giving China 15% growth. Can you imagine, an investor coming to you and saying, I can guarantee you 15% growth in your money during this global recession? That's outrageous. But the ones that profit from that the most, unfortunately, are the regime in China. These guys make a handful of fish, make money a handful of fish. And so on one hand, they want to keep this, they want to foster it, because it's the source of their economic growth. On the other hand, if you look historically, what happens to a state, especially an authoritarian state, when the economy starts growing? As soon as the middle class starts rising, it's usually when people say, starting to have it pretty good here. And then they start looking around. They don't have to spend as much of their time working for pennies every day, and they start looking around at the rest of their society, and they go, we could have done this a long time ago, and why are we only doing it in the city? We could be spreading this all over the country, these ideas. And then next thing you know, they're starting to threaten the authority and legitimacy of the regime. So the regime in China, like I said, it's a double-edged sword. They want this economic growth. It's the source for their prosperity and their success in the future, but at the same time, they're keeping it a very tight control on it. They're limiting it to very small areas. They're limiting the amount of free speech. I think China, as far as a developing state, has the highest rate of execution than any other country in the world. I'm not talking about central law numbers, I'm talking about per capita, in other words. And, they're scared to death of what might happen if people get the notion that, things are starting to look up, and the only thing that's keeping me down is the government.
You ever seen the video? Remember when there was the London riot recently? Well, it's a more recent one. I think it started over a police officer killing somebody, killing a youth, and then it kind of spread out and there was a full riot. This is,
Was it the Harry Potter actor got arrested in?
Yeah.
Because he had the Molotov cocktail.
It was full riot, and it went all over the news nuts. And I read some statistic, like, riots 3 times the size of that happen in China once a week. Like that, yeah, I don't know what search term to use, but there are videos on the internet where you can see like tens of thousands of villagers chasing out all the military and police officers. Like, you just see this wave of like thousands of police officers running, like just knocking one each other over, and then all of a sudden you just see angry villagers. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that soccer video where the police officer hits the one guy and just like the whole soccer crowd riots like that all the time.
Yeah. Another example of NGOs at the social level playing a role in some other human rights fraud. That's really the root of the Arab Spring that we saw last year. These groups in Tunisia. That was a catalyst. There was a guy who was a fruit vendor on the street in Tunisia. And the government was very corrupt over there, and they issued licenses to do business. And this guy he'd been trying to sell fruit for a long time just to make a living. And the government came and shut his operation down and said, you don't have the proper license, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he set himself on fire. He killed himself. He ended up dying days later, during agonizing pain. But people say that was the catalyst for the Arab Spring. People realized that governments are too oppressive. We're not able to, just get on with our lives, and something's got to change. But, the mechanism that they used to organize really was Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. They documented all this stuff, used for social networking things that they could use to communicate with the outside, they communicate with one another in order to try to overcome the oppressive regime. And it worked in a couple different places, The regime in Tunisia was toppled. Mubarak was forced out of office in Egypt. Some of the other ones were forced, they were either going to stage a revolution or they were going to agree to changes of policies that happened in Morocco specifically.
Now Syria's next on the list.
Syria, everybody's looking at Syria right now. I think that's more of a complex issue given the ethnic diversity.
Also, militaristically, we would have a much harder time doing what we did in Libya and Syria, things they have anti-air missiles on scale that Libya could never even have.
Right.
What we're dealing with, if you're looking at Syria, they've got 15, 20 times the technology that Libya ever had. And so the consideration of which there's been talk, of course, of war with Syria and things like that.
Well, they've got a lot of, Syria has a lot of support from Iran, where they enjoy a lot of that. Libya didn't have that extra. As a matter of fact, most of the Arab world kind of turned their back on Gaddafi a long time ago.
So that's Gaddafi came out and said he was an African.
They didn't appreciate that.
Well,
most of the Arab Spring was pushed by like there was involvement from the State Department. They took a bunch